Marcus threw himself between the kidnappers and the little girl without thinking twice. The first blow shattered his ribs. The second split his lip. But he didn't let go, not until her father's motorcycle roared into the alley. The bikers pulled the men off him, and the girl was safe. Marcus collapsed on the pavement, bleeding and broken, certain he'd die in that alley like he'd lived, alone and forgotten. But 48 hours later, 3 men in suits appeared at the shelter asking for him by name. What they said next would change everything he thought he knew about himself. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. Rain hammered the South Chicago alley so hard it sounded like gunfire on the rusted dumpsters. The first scream sliced right through it. Marcus jerked awake on the cold concrete, heart slamming against his ribs. For a split second, he thought it was another nightmare. The same one where his mother was gasping for air, reaching for him, then going still. But this voice was higher, sharper, and it wasn't in his head. It was close. "Let me go? Please, let me go." A little girl. Marcus pushed himself up, his cardboard mattress sliding off his shoulders, rain soaking straight through the thin hoodie he wore. The alley behind Murphy's bar always stank of stale beer, rotting food, and old cigarettes. But tonight there was something new in the air. Fear. He pressed his back against the brick wall and crept toward the mouth of the alley, bare toes slipping in oily puddles. At 12, he'd already learned the first rule of surviving on the streets. Don't get involved. When people yelled, you minded your business. When cars pulled in slow and left fast, you looked away. You never stepped between dangerous men and whatever they wanted. But then he heard it again, broken, terrified, cracking under the rain. "Daddy, help!" Marcus's breath caught. His hands clenched into fists without him meaning to. He edged closer and peeked around the dumpster. 2 men in dark hoodies were dragging a little girl toward a white van idling at the far end of the alley, its back doors yawning open like a mouth. She was tiny, her blonde hair plastered to her cheeks from the rain, her plaid skirt and knee-high socks soaked. A small pink backpack lay abandoned in a puddle, one strap still twitching from how hard they'd ripped it off. She couldn't be more than 7. "Shut her up," one of the men snapped, glancing over his shoulder. The other slapped a hand over her mouth. She kicked wildly, shoes scraping on wet pavement. She tried to bite him, but he just laughed. Every part of Marcus screamed to back away, to disappear into the shadows like always. If they saw him, he'd be next. If the cops got involved, they'd drag him back to some group home that smelled like bleach and sadness, then forget him all over again. He could pretend he never saw this. He could lie to himself later and say she got away. If you're the kind of person who can walk away from a child screaming for help, you should probably click off this story now, because what happens next will stay with you. The girl's eyes swept the alley in wild panic and landed on him. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Marcus felt the rain, the ache in his empty stomach, the sting of cold wind cutting through his hoodie. He saw every detail of her face. Watery green eyes, freckles across her nose, a purple butterfly clip barely hanging on in her tangled hair. "Help me," her eyes begged. No sound came out, but he heard it anyway. His legs were moving before his brain caught up. "Hey," he shouted, voice cracking. "Let her go." Both men turned. The taller one cursed. "Where'd this rat come from?" Marcus sprinted toward them, feet slapping on wet concrete. He didn't have a plan, just a surge of anger so strong it burned away the fear. Images flashed through his mind. His mother on the bathroom floor, the social worker's cold voice, doors closing in his face. He'd been powerless then. He was not going to be powerless now. He slammed into the man holding the girl, all 90 skinny pounds of him crashing into the guy's side. The man staggered, his grip loosening just enough. The girl's head snapped back as she sucked in air. "Run!" Marcus yelled at her. "Run!" She twisted, slipping out of the man's grasp, and bolted toward the mouth of the alley. Her shoes splashed through puddles, arms pumping, breath ragged. She made it 3 steps before the second man caught Marcus by the collar and yanked him off his feet. The punch came so fast he didn't see it, only felt the explosion of pain as the man's fist connected with his jaw. His teeth crashed together. The world went white, then smeared with stars. He hit the ground hard, cheeks scraping across gravel. For a second, he just lay there, rain pounding his back, mouth filling with blood. His ears rang. He could have stayed down. They might have just kicked him once or twice, shoved him aside, taken the girl anyway. But when he looked up, even through blurry vision, he saw one of them grab her again, fingers digging into her tiny arm. The girl screamed like her lungs were tearing. Marcus forced himself to his knees. "Let her go," he rasped, spitting blood onto the pavement. The shorter man sneered. "You got a death wish, kid?" He kicked Marcus in the ribs. The crack was sickening. White-hot agony shot through his chest, stealing his breath. Marcus curled instinctively, arms wrapping around his torso, but another kick slammed into his back, then another. He tasted copper, felt something warm trickling from his nose, maybe his ear. His fingers were numb. His thoughts scattered. "You did enough," a weak voice in his head whispered. "You tried. No one would blame you for stopping. Just stay down. Go back to being invisible. Nobody cares if you live or die anyway." If stories like this make your heart race, imagine being that kid on the ground. If you'd never want to be abandoned like Marcus, make sure you're here for the rest of his story. The girl's sobs cut through the haze again. "Please, Daddy." Marcus clawed at the pavement, dragging himself forward. Every breath felt like glass in his lungs. He could barely see, barely think. But he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He was not letting them throw her into that van. He launched himself at the man's legs, wrapping his arms around the guy's knees. The man stumbled, cursing, and the girl slipped from his grasp again, collapsing to the ground. Marcus tightened his hold even as the man hammered fists into his back. "Let go, you little freak," the man roared. "No," Marcus wheezed. The other kidnapper grabbed a fistful of Marcus's hair and yanked his head back so hard his neck screamed. Rain ran into his eyes, mixing with tears and blood. "You're gonna wish you were never born," the man hissed. Too late, Marcus thought, not sure if the words made it to his lips. Already due. The first blow to his face shattered something. Maybe his nose, maybe his cheekbone. Pain roared through him like a siren. A second punch turned his vision black at the edges. Somewhere far away, the girl kept crying. He latched onto that sound like a lifeline. "Stop," she begged. "You're hurting him." One of the men laughed. "That's the idea, sweetheart." Marcus's fingers slipped on the wet denim. His grip loosened. His arms felt like lead. He'd always thought you'd know when you were about to die, that you'd be scared or angry or begging for another chance. All he felt was tired. Then a different sound cut into the chaos. A deep, throaty rumble rolled through the alley, low at first, then rising. It didn't sound like a car. It sounded like thunder with teeth. The kidnappers froze. Even through the pounding in his skull, Marcus felt the vibration in the ground. Motorcycles. Big ones. The men swore under their breath. The shorter one looked toward the mouth of the alley. Headlights appeared in the rain. 1, 2, 3, 4, cutting through the darkness like sharp, white knives. Engines growled louder, closer, until the air itself seemed to shake. The first bike roared into the alley, a black machine chrome bright even in the storm. The rider was massive, broad shoulders filling out a soaked leather jacket that bore a winged skull on the back. The words over it were blurred by rain, but Marcus recognized the shape. Hell's Angels. He'd heard of them on the streets, the kind of club you didn't mess with. Dangerous men, rumors said. Men the cops hated, men other criminals feared. Men who didn't scare easy. The rider ripped his helmet off as the bike slid to a stop. Gray-streaked beard, hard eyes, jaw like stone. His gaze landed on the girl first. She stumbled toward him, sobbing. "Daddy." The world narrowed. The man's expression shattered. Just for a second, he wasn't a biker, wasn't a legend in a leather cut. He was just a father seeing his daughter in someone else's hands. "Lily," his voice broke. The other 3 bikes screamed in behind him, blocking the van in. The kidnappers panicked. One shoved Marcus aside, reaching for the van doors. The other grabbed the girl again, yanking her backward like a shield. "Back off," he shouted, arm locked around her tiny chest. "Or she gets hurt." The lead biker's eyes went cold. He swung one leg off his bike, boots splashing into a puddle, shoulders squared. Up close, Marcus could see the patch on his chest, a name tag that read Reaper. Reaper took one step forward, then another. "You picked the wrong kid," he said, voice deadly calm. "And the wrong city." The kidnapper pressed something against Lily's side. Marcus couldn't see what it was, but Lily gasped in pain and terror. Reaper's fists clenched. "Let her go," he ordered. "Not a chance, old man. You move, she bleeds." Reaper tilted his head slightly, like he was listening to something. Rain streamed down his face. His brothers spread out behind him, forming a wall of leather and metal between the kidnappers and escape. "Last chance," Reaper said quietly. "Walk away breathing." The man holding Lily laughed, high and shaky. "You gonna shoot through your own kid?" Reaper smiled, but there was nothing kind in it. "Who said anything about shooting?" He moved. 1 second he was standing still, the next he was a blur. He didn't go for the gun, or whatever the man held. He went for the arm. His hand clamped down on the kidnapper's wrist with brutal precision. There was a sickening crack. The man screamed, releasing Lily as his fingers spasmed. Reaper yanked his daughter out of harm's way with one arm and drove his other fist straight into the kidnapper's throat. The man went down choking, clutching his neck. The second kidnapper bolted toward the van, but another biker stepped into his path and took him down with a tackle that rattled the dumpster. In seconds, the two men were on the ground, faces pressed into cold, filthy water, arms wrenched behind their backs. Zip ties snapped tight around their wrists. The alley went strangely quiet, except for the rain and the ticking of cooling engines. Lily buried her face in Reaper's chest, small body shuddering with sobs. He wrapped both arms around her, holding her so tightly it looked like he was afraid she'd vanish if he let go. "It's okay, Lilybug," he murmured, voice breaking. "I got you. Daddy's got you." Marcus lay on his side, every breath a knife. His vision tunneled in and out, the scene flickering like a broken TV. He watched through a haze as Reaper checked his daughter over, hands gentle but shaking. "Are you hurt? Did they?" She shook her head frantically. "They tried to take me, Daddy, but he stopped them." Her small hand lifted, pointing toward the crumpled shape on the ground. It took a second for Reaper to follow her finger. Then he saw Marcus. For the first time, someone really looked at him, not like trash on the sidewalk, not like a case file or a problem. Reaper's gaze moved over the bruises, the blood, the way Marcus's chest stuttered as he tried to breathe. Their eyes met. Marcus tried to smile. It came out more like a grimace. "Is she okay?" he whispered. Reaper strode over, Lily still clinging to his jacket. He knelt down beside Marcus, rain dripping from his beard. "You did this?" Reaper asked, voice low. "Couldn't let them." "Take her," Marcus croaked. Up close, Reaper could see the kid was just bones and bruises, clothes hanging off him, shoes falling apart. A 12-year-old who had no one and nothing, but had still stood up when grown men ran. Reaper swallowed hard. Something in his chest shifted. "Patch the kid up," one of the bikers called. "Ambulance is on the way." Reaper brushed wet hair from Marcus's forehead. "What's your name, kid?" "Marcus," he breathed. "Marcus Hayes." Reaper frowned. For just a second, the name seemed to hit him funny. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, like he'd heard that name somewhere before, a long time ago in a different life. Then Lily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, look at his arm." Reaper glanced down. On Marcus's wrist, where the sleeve had ridden up, was a dark, oddly shaped birthmark. Rainwater ran over it, tracing its outline. Reaper's heart stopped. He'd seen that same birthmark before. In a faded photograph, years ago, held by a man with red-rimmed eyes who had begged for help finding his stolen infant son. A baby named Marcus Hayes. If you think Marcus's pain ends here, you're not ready for what's coming next. Like and subscribe to see it. Reaper's voice was rough when he spoke again. "Hold on, Marcus. Don't you dare check out on me now." "Wasn't planning to," Marcus muttered, but his eyes were slipping closed, the world dimming around the edges. As the distant wail of sirens grew louder, Reaper stared at that birthmark, at the broken boy who'd saved his daughter, and felt the ground under his feet shift. He didn't know it yet, but in 48 hours, that name, Marcus Hayes, would blow his entire world apart. Marcus let the darkness pull him under, the sound of engines and sirens fading. The last thing he felt, a rough, calloused hand gripping his. Refusing to let go, Marcus woke to the sound of a heart monitor arguing with his pulse. Beep, beep, beep. Each chirp stabbed through the fog in his head, dragging him out of the darkness he'd fallen into in that alley. The smell hit him next, not rain and garbage, but disinfectant and something sharp and sterile that burned his nose. A hospital. His eyes snapped open. Bright white ceiling, fluorescent lights humming, and 4-line taped to the back of his hand. His ribs screamed when he tried to sit up, a crushing pain that made his vision flash white again. He sucked in a breath and fell back against the pillow. For a moment, panic clawed up his throat. Hospitals meant questions. Questions meant social workers. Social workers meant another group home where boys twice his size stole his food, his shoes, his sleep. Hospitals meant someone deciding where he belonged without asking him. He reached for the 4, fingers trembling, ready to rip it out and bolt. The door clicked. "Easy, Tiger," a deep voice said. "You rip that out, they'll just stick you again." Marcus froze. A man stepped into view, filling the doorway like a shadow. Leather cut, gray-streaked beard still damp around the edges. Eyes that had watched men bleed and didn't flinch, but now held something else. Worry. Reaper. The memories hit Marcus like a series of punches. The alley. Lily screaming. Knuckles smashing into his ribs. The roar of motorcycles. The way Reaper had looked at that mark on his wrist like it was a ghost. "You're awake," Reaper said, moving closer to the bed. "Doc said you'd be out another day at least. Guess you don't listen so good." Marcus swallowed, throat dry. "Lily," he croaked. "She's—" Reaper's face softened in a way Marcus hadn't known men like him could. "She's fine. Shaken up. Won't let go of that pink backpack of hers. But she's home. Because of you." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Relief made his eyes sting. He turned his head away so Reaper wouldn't see. They said 3 broken ribs, concussion, nose busted, a couple stitches. Reaper's voice dropped. "Could have been way worse, kid. You shouldn't have made it through that beating." Marcus almost laughed. "Guess I'm stubborn." "You guess?" Reaper snorted, but there was no humor in it. He pulled a chair up to the bed and sat, elbows on his knees, leather creaking. Up close, Marcus could see grease under his fingernails, faint scars on his knuckles, a patch on his chest that still read Reaper. "How long was I out?" Marcus asked. 2 days. It's been 48 hours since that alley." Reaper watched him carefully. "Nobody's come for you. No cops. No social workers. No family." Marcus looked away again. "Don't have any." The words landed heavy between them. This is where most people click away, right when a kid like Marcus needs someone most. If you hate how often kids get forgotten in stories like this, don't leave him here alone. Like and subscribe so you don't abandon him the way everyone else did. Reaper leaned back, studying him. "Marcus Hayes," he said slowly, like he was trying the name on his tongue. "You ever heard of a man named Robert Hayes?" Marcus frowned. "No. Should I have?" "Maybe." Reaper's gaze flicked to the door, then back. "You remember anything about your dad at all?" Marcus shook his head, immediately regretting it as pain flared behind his eyes. "Mom said he bailed before I was born. Said he didn't want me." His jaw tightened. "She lied about a lot of stuff, but I believe that part." Reaper's expression darkened. He was silent for a moment, fingers drumming once against his knee. "What if I told you?" he said carefully. "That's not the story I heard." Marcus's chest went tight. "What does that mean?" Before Reaper could answer, the door opened again. A woman in scrubs slipped in, followed by 3 men in dark suits who looked like they'd melted out of some corporate boardroom. The nurse went to the monitor, checking numbers, but Marcus barely saw her. His eyes locked on the men, polished shoes, expensive watches, expressions like carved stone. "Mr. Hayes," the one in the middle said, voice smooth as glass. "Good to see you awake." "I think you're in the wrong room," Marcus said. "I'm not a Mr. Anything." The man's lips twitched. "You will be." Reaper's posture changed, muscles coiling. "Who are you?" he asked, his tone suddenly sharp. "Daniel Cole," the man replied. "Legal representative for the Hayes estate." Estate. The word didn't fit in Marcus's world. His world was alleys and shelters, back doors and soup kitchens. Estates belonged in TV shows other people watched through lit windows he passed at night. "You got the wrong kid," Marcus muttered. "I don't have." Daniel slid a manila folder from his briefcase. "Hospital ran your blood work when you came in. Standard procedure. Your name triggered a private search we placed years ago. Your DNA pinged a match." "A match to what?" Reaper growled. "To a man named Robert Hayes," Daniel said. "Billionaire. Founder of Hayes Industries." Marcus laughed, a dry, brittle sound that hurt his cracked ribs. "Yeah, right." Daniel opened the folder, holding up a photo. Marcus squinted. A man in his 40s, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than every car parked outside the hospital combined, stared back at him. Same dark hair that wouldn't lie flat. Same stubborn jawline. Same slightly crooked nose. Except on the man it looked like money, not like something a boot had broken and never healed right. Marcus's heart stuttered. "We've been looking for you for 13 years, Daniel said quietly. "Your father never stopped." The room seemed to tilt. The monitor began to beep faster. "Stop messing with him," Reaper snapped. "He's 12. And legally," Daniel replied, unruffled. "He's the sole heir to a $42 million fortune." The number hit like a physical blow. Marcus choked on air. "You're lying." "Wish I was." Daniel set the folder on the tray table, turning a few pages so Marcus could see. Newspaper clippings. Missing child posters. Legal documents full of words Marcus couldn't pronounce. "Your father filed a missing persons report when you were a baby," Daniel continued. "Your mother disappeared with you during a custody battle. He hired private investigators. Followed false leads across the country. He put your name on every database, flagged every hospital. That's why, when your labs hit the system 2 nights ago, alarms went off in our office. 2 nights ago. The alley. The beating. The blood on the pavement. If Marcus had stayed hidden, if he hadn't gone for Lily. No labs. No hospital. No ping. You ever wonder how different your life would look if you helped one person instead of looking away? Marcus nearly died protecting a girl he didn't know, and it changed his entire fate. Like and subscribe if you believe more people need to see what one brave choice can do. Marcus's hands shook. "Where is he?" he asked, voice small in a way he hated. "Where's my dad?" Daniel's gaze lowered for the first time. "He died 6 months ago. Heart attack, officially. But before he passed, he updated his will one last time. Left everything to you, on the condition that if you were ever found, we'd bring you home." Home. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Reaper said nothing, but his jaw was clenched so tight the muscles jumped. "Why now?" Marcus whispered. Why did it find me now?" Daniel nodded toward Reaper. "Ask your friend." Reaper's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Your daughter's school," Daniel said. "Your club. Your, reputation. You and your people have been on certain radars for a while. The men who tried to grab Lily? They weren't street trash. They're tied to Victor Castellano. Even Marcus knew that name. Street kids traded it in whispers. Castellano owned half the city's fear. People who owed him disappeared. People who crossed him ended up on the news. What does he want with my daughter?" Reaper demanded, voice low and dangerous. Daniel's gaze slid to Marcus. "Same thing he wants with the boy." Marcus's skin went cold. "Me? I don't have anything." "You have 42 million reasons for a man like Castellano to want you gone," Daniel said flatly. "If you die before certain age thresholds, portions of the estate revert. Not to the state. Not to charity." He tapped the folder. "To your father's closest living blood relative." Reaper's eyes darkened. "Let me guess. Victor Castellano." "His legal name before he changed it was Victor Hayes," Daniel said. "Your uncle." Marcus stared at him, the words bouncing off something numb inside. "You're telling me the man who sent those guys after Lily is my family?" "In a strictly biological sense," Daniel said. "In every other sense, he's a threat." Silence pressed in. Reaper rose to his feet slowly, like he was afraid if he moved too fast he'd break something. "You're saying my kid was used as bait to flush out this boy and take his head off?" His voice vibrated with barely checked fury. Daniel didn't flinch. "Castellano has been circling the Hayes fortune for years. When Robert died, We accelerated the search for Marcus. Obviously, we weren't the only ones who realized the boy might be alive. Marcus felt sick. The room blurred at the edges. For 12 years, he'd been nothing. Nobody. An invisible kid in cities that never learned his name. Now, suddenly, he was worth more money than he could imagine, and that price tag had almost cost Lily her life. "Take it back," he said hoarsely. "I don't want it. The money. The whatever. Give it to someone else." "We can't," Daniel replied. "Legally, it's yours. That's why Castellano wants you dead." The words settled over Marcus like a weight he couldn't push off. Every breath hurt. Every memory rewrote itself. His mother's slurred stories. The way she'd hissed about that rich bastard and his lawyers. The night she'd disappeared and never come back. Had she sold him? "Kid," Reaper said roughly, "this ain't on you, isn't it?" Marcus snapped, surprising them both. If I didn't exist, Lily would be safe. Those guys wouldn't have." Reaper slammed his palm down on the foot of the bed, making the metal shake. "Don't you finish that sentence." Marcus flinched. "You saved my daughter," Reaper said, voice steady but wild around the edges. "You hear me? You didn't bring this to her. You stood between her and it. You bled for a kid you didn't know. That's not guilt. That's courage." Marcus blinked fast, fighting the burn in his eyes. Most people will never bleed for a stranger. Most will scroll past stories like this and feel nothing. If you're one of the rare ones who refuses to look away from pain, who believes kids like Marcus and Lily deserve protection, not silence, then don't just watch. Like and subscribe so more people see this kind of courage instead of another empty trend. Daniel cleared his throat. "We need to move him to a secure location. Castellano won't stop. Not now that he knows Marcus is alive and tied to the money." "Secure location?" Marcus echoed weakly. "Like witness protection?" "Like a safe house," Daniel said. "Private. Off books. Until we can lock certain things down legally and financially." Reaper stepped between Daniel and the bed. "He's not going anywhere I can't reach him." Daniel met his glare. "You're currently on several watch lists, Mr. Reaper. Your presence complicates. You think I care about your lists?" Reaper growled. "That boy took a beat down that would have dropped grown men to keep my kid breathing. He leaves, I go. Wherever." Marcus stared at him. No one had ever said anything like that about him. No one had ever insisted on going wherever he went. Usually, they couldn't get rid of him fast enough. "Fine," Daniel said after a long beat. "One of your people can accompany us, but we move within the hour." Marcus looked down at his bruised hands, the 4 taped to his skin, the folder full of a life he'd never known he'd lost. A father who'd searched. An uncle who wanted him dead. A fortune he never asked for. He swallowed. "Do I get a say?" Daniel hesitated. "Legally, you're still a minor. But practically, you can refuse to come. You can walk out that door back to the life you had before." Marcus thought of the alley. The rain. The way his body had crumpled under those kicks. He thought of Lily's tiny arms crushing into Reaper's vest, her voice shaking as she'd said, "He saved me." He knew what waited if he walked away. Cold nights, empty stomach, cops who didn't remember his name, predators who didn't care. He also knew what waited if he stayed. A target on his back worth $42 million. "I don't care about the money," he said. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. Not Lily. Not your guys. Nobody." Reaper's hand landed gently but firmly on his shoulder. "Then you let people stand with you this time. You hear me? You don't get to do this alone anymore." Marcus met his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he didn't see pity there. He saw something that scared him even more. Hope. The monitor steadied. The rain outside the hospital window pattered softly against the glass. "Okay," Marcus whispered. "I'll go. But if this gets Lily hurt, then we take the fight to Castellano," Reaper said. "On our terms." Daniel checked his watch. "Then we'd better move. He won't wait long to make his next play." Marcus lay back, heart racing. 48 hours ago, he'd been a homeless boy in an alley no one cared about. Now he was a billionaire's missing son, a crime lord's target, and the reason a biker club and a team of lawyers were about to collide. And somewhere in the city, Victor Castellano was already adjusting his plans, eyes on the boy who had ruined his first attempt. Marcus didn't know it yet, but the next time they met, it wouldn't be in a hospital. It would be at a place Victor chose, with a price Marcus never imagined he'd have to pay. The safe house smelled like pine trees and gun oil. Marcus stood at the second-floor window, staring at the dark woods that surrounded the cabin. No streetlights, no traffic, no alleys to disappear into if things went sideways. Just acres of silence that pressed against the glass like it wanted in. He hated it. For days in this place, and he couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against the shutters might as well have been someone testing the locks. The lawyers had promised safety, but Marcus had learned a long time ago that promises were just words people said before they left. Behind him, Reaper sat at the kitchen table, cleaning parts of a shotgun by lamplight. The methodical click-clack of metal pieces was the only sound besides the cabin settling into the cold November night. "You gonna stare out that window till dawn again?" Reaper asked without looking up. Marcus shrugged. "Can't sleep. Nightmares. Something like that." Reaper grunted. "Join the club, kid." Marcus turned slightly, watching the older man work. Reaper's hands moved with practiced precision. Disassemble, inspect, oil, reassemble. There was something almost meditative about it, like he was trying to put order to a world that refused to hold still. "You think she's okay?" Marcus asked quietly. "Lily." Reaper's jaw tightened. "She's with her aunt in Milwaukee. Safer than here. My club's got eyes on the house 24/7. Nobody gets within a mile without us knowing. She shouldn't have to hide because of me." "She's hiding because of Castellano," Reaper corrected sharply. "You didn't create this mess. You just walked into the middle of it." Marcus looked down at his hands. The bruises were fading to yellow-green now, but the ache in his ribs hadn't gone anywhere. Neither had the guilt. A phone buzzed on the table. Reaper grabbed it, frowned at the screen, then answered. "Yeah." Marcus couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Reaper's expression harden into something cold and sharp. "When?" Reaper demanded. A pause. Both of them. Another pause, longer this time. "Stay on him. I'm coming." He hung up and stood in one fluid motion, grabbing his leather cut from the back of the chair. "What happened?" Marcus asked, heart already racing. "The two guys who grabbed Lily," Reaper said, voice flat. "They posted bail this morning." Marcus's stomach dropped. "How?" "They tried to kidnap. Money buys lawyers. Lawyers buy loopholes." Reaper shoved his arms through the sleeves of his vest, the death head on the back catching the lamplight. "Castellano got them out." "Where are they now?" Reaper's eyes met his. "That's the problem. We had someone watching them. They walked out of the courthouse, got into a black SUV, and vanished. No tail. No trace." The room felt smaller suddenly. Marcus's pulse hammered in his ears. "He's making a move," he whispered. "Yeah." Reaper grabbed keys from the counter. "Which is why you're staying put. Daniel's got two guys outside watching the perimeter. Don't open the door for anyone but me. You hear me?" Marcus nodded, but his throat was too tight to speak. Reaper paused at the door, one hand on the frame. "I mean it, kid. Anyone knocks, anyone calls, you don't answer. You lock yourself in the upstairs bathroom and you call this number." He scribbled something on a napkin and handed it over. "My VP. He'll get to you faster than the cops ever could." "Where are you going?" "To have a conversation with some people who owe me answers." Reaper's expression softened just slightly. "I'll be back before morning. You're safe here." Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. The roar of his motorcycle split the night, then faded into the distance. Marcus stood alone in the quiet cabin, napkin crumpled in his fist. Safe. He wanted to believe it. 2 hours passed. Marcus paced the living room, then the kitchen, then back to the window. The security guys outside were invisible in the darkness, but Daniel had promised they were there. Watching. Waiting. Marcus tried to distract himself. He flipped through a magazine someone had left on the coffee table, something about vintage motorcycles he didn't understand. He stared at the cold fireplace. He counted the wooden beams in the ceiling. None of it worked. His mind kept circling back to the same thought. What if Castellano already knew where he was? What if those two kidnappers weren't just bailed out? They were bait. What if Reaper was walking into a trap right now because Marcus existed? The guilt twisted deeper, sharp as broken glass. He should have stayed in that alley. Should have kept his head down. Lily would have been fine. Reaper would have found her anyway. The kidnappers would have failed. And Marcus would still be invisible, worthless, but at least not dragging good people into a war they didn't ask for. His phone buzzed. Marcus froze. He pulled the cheap burner Daniel had given him from his pocket. The screen glowed with a single notification. Unknown number. One new message. His finger hovered over it. Don't open it, a voice in his head warned. Reaper said, don't answer anyone. But what if it was Reaper? What if something happened? He opened it. The message loaded. A video file. No text. Marcus's instinct screamed at him to delete it, to throw the phone across the room. But his thumb moved before his brain could stop it. The video started. The frame was shaky, like someone filming on a phone in low light. It took Marcus a second to orient himself. Then he saw it. A warehouse. Concrete floors. Rusted metal beams overhead. In the center of the frame, tied to a chair with duct tape across his mouth, was one of Reaper's guys. Marcus recognized the Hell's Angels patch on his cut, the tattoos snaking up his forearms. His face was bruised. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. Then the camera panned. Another man stepped into view. Tall, lean, graying hair slicked back. Expensive suit that looked out of place in the grimy warehouse. A smile that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. Victor Castellano. Marcus's breath caught. Hello, Marcus, Victor said, voice smooth as silk over razors. I thought it was time we had a proper introduction. The camera steadied, focusing on Victor's face. You've been quite the inconvenience, Victor continued, pacing slowly. Ruining my plans. Costing me money. Making me look weak in front of people who don't tolerate weakness. He stopped, turning toward the biker tied to the chair. But I'm a reasonable man. I believe in second chances. He reached into his jacket. Marcus's stomach turned. Victor pulled out a gun, sleek, black, professional, and checked the chamber with casual ease. Most people sleep through nights like this, never knowing kids like Marcus are watching threats designed to break them. If you can't ignore a 12-year-old being hunted by a killer, don't just watch in silence. Like and subscribe so this story reaches people who'll actually fight for him. Here's how this works, Victor said, voice never rising. You have a choice, nephew. You can stay hidden in whatever hole they've tucked you into, protected by bikers and lawyers who think they're untouchable. You can let this drag out. Let more people get hurt. Let your little friend Lily spend the rest of her childhood looking over her shoulder. He pressed the barrel of the gun against the biker's temple. The man's eyes went wide. He thrashed against the restraints, muffled screams barely audible through the tape. Or, Victor continued, you can meet me. Tomorrow. Alone. And we settle this like men. Marcus's hands shook so badly the phone nearly slipped. 3 p.m., Victor said. I'll send you the address in the morning. You come alone. No Reaper. No club. No lawyers. Just you and me, having a conversation about your future. His smile widened. If you don't show well. He cocked the gun. Let's just say your new family will start getting smaller. One by one. Until there's no one left to stand between you and me. The camera zoomed in on the biker's terrified face. Then it cut to black. A second message appeared. Unknown number. Tick-tock. Marcus. Tomorrow at 3. Don't be late. Below it, a new file loaded. Marcus's vision blurred as he opened it. Surveillance photos. The first one showed Lily's aunt's house in Milwaukee. The second showed Lily herself, walking out the front door with a backpack, a Hell's Angels member trailing a few steps behind. The third photo was time-stamped 20 minutes ago. Marcus's knees buckled. He sank onto the couch, phone trembling in his grip. Castellano had eyes on Lily. Right now, even after everything, after moving her, after hiding her, he knew exactly where she was. And if Marcus didn't show up tomorrow, Victor would take her. Or worse. The room spun. Marcus couldn't breathe. His ribs screamed, his head pounded, and the weight of it all crushed down on him like he was back in that alley, fists raining down, drowning in blood and rain. He thought of Reaper. The way the man had looked at him in the hospital. The way he'd said, you don't get to do this alone anymore. But what choice did Marcus have? If he told Reaper, the club would storm in. People would die. Lily might get caught in the crossfire. If he went to the lawyers, they'd lock him down tighter, and Castellano would just escalate. More victims. More blood. If he ran, Castellano would hunt him forever, and everyone Marcus ever cared about would pay the price. But if he went alone, maybe, just maybe, he could end it. Marcus stood slowly, legs unsteady. He moved to the window and stared out into the black woods. Somewhere out there, 2 security guards were watching for threats from the outside. They weren't watching for the threat already inside the cabin. Him. Marcus pulled the napkin from his pocket, the one with Reaper's VP's number. He stared at it for a long time. Then he crumpled it and threw it in the trash. He wasn't calling for help. Not this time. By 2:45 a.m., Marcus had made his decision. He wrote a note on the back of the magazine he'd been flipping through earlier. Kept it short. No explanations that would make sense. Just enough so Reaper wouldn't think he'd been taken. Gone to fix this. Don't follow. Protect Lily. -M. He left it on the kitchen table, weighted down with a coffee mug. Then he grabbed the thickest jacket he could find, laced up his worn sneakers, and moved to the back door. The lawyers had said the perimeter was monitored, but they were watching for people coming in, not a 12-year-old slipping out. Marcus eased the door open, inch by inch, holding his breath. Cold November air bit his face. The woods stretched out before him, a wall of shadow and silence. He stepped into the night. For 10 minutes, he moved carefully through the trees, using techniques he'd learned on the streets. Stay low, step light, don't snap branches. He angled away from where he guessed the guards were posted, circling wide toward the dirt road that led back to civilization. His ribs ached. His breath fogged in the freezing air. But he didn't stop. When he finally hit the road, he started walking. No phone, no plan, just a direction and a deadline. 3 p.m. tomorrow. Somewhere behind him, the safe house sat quiet and empty. Somewhere ahead, Victor Castellano was waiting. And somewhere in between, a 12-year-old boy with a $42 million price on his head walked alone into the dark, convinced that sacrificing himself was the only way to save the people who'd tried to save him. If you've ever felt like you had to face the worst parts of your life alone because asking for help felt impossible, you already know what Marcus is walking into. Don't let him go there in silence. Like and subscribe if you believe no kid should have to choose between dying alone or watching everyone they love get destroyed. By dawn, Reaper would find the note. By noon, the hunt would begin. But by 3 p.m., it might already be too late. Marcus hadn't realized how loud a city was until he'd walked for hours just to hear it again. By the time he reached the edge of Chicago, his legs burned and his lungs felt like they'd been scrubbed with sandpaper. Dawn had bled into morning, then into a washed-out gray afternoon. Cars rolled past him without slowing, their tires hissing on wet asphalt, sending up sprays of cold water that soaked his jeans. He kept walking. Bus stops flickered by. He thought about climbing on one, riding it until the driver started asking questions. But he had no money, no address, no plan except the one message snarled in his brain. 3 p.m. Alone. Every time his feet tried to slow, his mind dragged him back to the video. The gun at the biker's head, the photos of Lily's school, Victor's calm promise to start cutting pieces off Marcus's new life. He couldn't risk that being a bluff. By 1 p.m., he'd reached a part of the city he didn't recognize. Warehouses loomed on either side of the wide industrial road, their windows dark, their loading docks empty. Faded logos hinted at businesses that had died quietly years ago. Marcus checked the time on a bank sign. 1:12 p.m. He had less than 2 hours to figure out where he was supposed to go. The burner phone Victor had used to send the video was gone. Marcus had snapped it in half and tossed it into a storm drain miles back. He'd gotten the address before he destroyed it, repeating it in his head like a prayer he didn't believe in. Pier 47, West Riverfront. He spotted a battered street sign at the next intersection and pushed through the ache in his legs. West River. The wind sharpened as he drew closer to the water, knifing through his jacket. The air smelled different here, less exhaust, more rust and cold. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds that threatened snow. Chicago in November. He turned a corner and saw the river. It cut through the city like a strip of dull metal, reflecting the flat, gray sky. Old shipping piers jutted into the water, some sagging, some fenced off. Towering cranes stood motionless against the skyline like rusted skeletons. He scanned the numbers stenciled on sagging gates. 43, 45, 46. The sign for Pier 47 was half torn off, the remaining digits hanging crooked. The gate itself hung open, chain and padlock dangling uselessly like someone had pretended to secure it. No guards visible. No cars. Just an empty expanse of cracked concrete leading to a warehouse at the end of the pier, its windows boarded, its big bay doors shut. It should have felt like a trap. It did. He walked in anyway. Inside, the warehouse swallowed sound. The big rolling door groaned as Marcus slipped through a side entrance, the rusted metal scraping just enough to make his skin prickle. He stepped into a cavernous space dotted with old shipping containers and stacks of wooden pallets. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by the drafts that snuck through cracks in the walls. He smelled oil, old rope, and the faint metallic tang that could have been rust or something uglier. Right on time. Victor's voice floated down from the catwalk above. Marcus turned slowly. Victor stood at the top of a metal staircase, one hand on the rail. His expensive coat looked wrong here, like a wolf wearing a suit in a slaughterhouse. Two men flanked him, different from the ones in the alley, but cut from the same cloth. Hard faces, colder eyes. "You came alone," Victor observed. "Good boy." Marcus said nothing. His ribs burned. His legs trembled. But he forced himself to meet Victor's gaze. "You said if I showed, you'd leave them alone," Marcus said. "Reaper. Lily. His guys." Victor's smile was almost gentle. "I said if you didn't show, they'd die. I never promised they were safe if you did." Marcus's stomach twisted. "Then why am I here?" Victor descended the stairs at an unhurried pace, his footsteps echoing lightly. "Because despite what you've been told, I'm not a monster. I believe in giving people chances to make useful choices." He reached the bottom and stopped a few feet away, studying Marcus like he was a strange animal that had wandered into his yard. "You don't look like $42 million, Victor said. "Sorry to disappoint," Marcus replied, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "On the contrary." Victor circled him slowly, hands clasped behind his back. "You impress me. Most kids in your position would be begging, crying, demanding to see their lawyer." He spat the word like it tasted bad. "You walked into my world alone. That takes courage." The compliment felt wrong. Marcus didn't want it. "I didn't do it to impress you," he said. "I did it so you'd stop going after them." Victor sighed. "Family," he said, shaking his head like it was a distasteful word. "It makes people irrational. Your father was the same. He spent 13 years chasing the ghost of you when he could have been building something worthwhile with me." The warehouse crackled with the weight of things unsaid. "You killed him," Marcus said quietly. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Prove it." "You poisoned him," Marcus pushed. "The lawyer, Daniel, he said your name used to be Hayes. You changed it. You wanted the money. You wanted his company. You couldn't get it if he was alive." Victor's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. "You've been briefed," he said. "Good. Saves us time." He moved to a nearby crate and picked up a folder, flipping it open. Even from a few feet away, Marcus recognized the layout: photos, printed emails, legal documents. His life had become paperwork overnight. "Here's the problem," Victor said. "By the time I stepped into the picture, your father had already made certain decisions. He cut me out of the company, cut me out of the inheritance, all because of a few misunderstandings. Like organized crime, extortion, and murder." Marcus shot back. Victor's eyes flashed. The nearby thug shifted his weight, but Victor lifted a hand, and he stilled. "Words," Victor said softly. "Labels. The world runs on power and leverage, Marcus. Your father was naive enough to think he could build an empire without getting his hands dirty. He never understood that sometimes you have to burn rot out of a thing if you want it to grow." He snapped the folder shut. "And then there was you. The golden child. The baby he wouldn't shut up about. The one he was sure he'd find. He wasted resources, time, influence chasing your shadow. Do you know how many chances he lost because he was distracted by you? Marcus's throat constricted. You're blaming me for him wanting me? I'm explaining why I needed you gone, Victor replied, as if he were discussing a business pivot, not murder. Dead, and ideally never found. The courts can't give money to a ghost. He stepped closer, his cologne cutting through the warehouse stink. But then you decided to grow a spine, he continued. You threw yourself between my men and that little girl. You crawled out of the cracks and into the light. You made yourself visible. And when they dragged your broken body into a hospital, your father's contingency plan fired off like a flare. He tapped Marcus's chest with 2 fingers, right over his bruised ribs. You turned yourself into a problem I can't ignore. There are people in this world who blame broken kids for the damage adults caused, and then punish them for surviving. If that makes your blood boil even a little, don't sit quietly and scroll past this. Like and subscribe so more people see what kids like Marcus are really up against. Marcus swallowed hard, refusing to step back. You already have more money than you can spend. Why are you so obsessed with this? Victor gave a small, humorless laugh. Because it's not about the money anymore. It's about control. About the principle. Your father thought he could cut me out and hand everything to a boy who's been sleeping in alleys. He leaned in, voice dropping. I won't let a street rat stand on my brother's bones and call it a legacy. Marcus's hands curled into fists, nails biting his palms. Then kill me and get it over with. Victor looked almost disappointed. You really think it's that simple? He nodded to his men. One of them disappeared into the shadows and returned a moment later, dragging someone with a bag over their head and hands zip-tied in front. Marcus's heart stuttered. The man was dumped onto his knees. The bag was yanked off. It wasn't one of Reaper's guys. It was Daniel. The lawyer's normally neat hair was a mess, his glasses gone, a blooming bruise darkening his jaw. He blinked in the dim light, squinting until his gaze landed on Marcus. Thank God, Daniel rasped. Marcus, what are you doing here? Where's Reaper? They said you were. Victor slapped the back of his head lightly. Questions, questions. You legal types never know when to shut up. Marcus's stomach dropped. You said come alone, he said to Victor. You already had him. Of course I did, Victor said. That safe house of yours. Cute. But money doesn't just buy lawyers. It buys information. Schedules. Security reports. Daniel here has been very helpful over the years, whether he meant to be or not. Daniel's face twisted. You hacked my... Victor sighed. Please. Don't embarrass yourself. He drew the gun Marcus had seen in the video and rested it on Daniel's shoulder almost casually. Here's the situation, Victor said, speaking to Marcus as if they were discussing terms over coffee. You have something I want. Legal access to the Hayes fortune. I have things you care about. He gestured with the gun. Daniel. Then, by implication, everything else. We can settle this in a few different ways. Marcus licked his lips. What ways? Option 1, Victor said. You cooperate. You sign certain documents transferring controlling interest in Hayes Industries to me. You sit in front of a camera and deliver a very emotional statement about how overwhelmed you are, how unprepared, how grateful you are that your uncle Victor has agreed to manage the company for you until you're older. There was venom in the word uncle. In return, Victor continued, you keep a generous allowance. A house, schooling, the illusion of a normal life. And, most importantly, your new friends and that little girl get to keep breathing. And if I say no? Marcus asked. Victor's smile vanished. Option 2, he said. You refuse. I kill your lawyer here as a lesson. I send pieces of your biker to their clubhouse until they stop playing hero. I take Lily, groom her to testify that you're unstable and unfit to handle money. Or I kill you quickly and let the state tie itself in knots trying to figure out where the fortune goes next. He tilted his head. Either way, I win. Daniel struggled, his voice hoarse. Marcus, listen to me. Legally, he can't. The gun pressed harder against his neck. Careful, Victor murmured. I'm trying to teach the boy about leverage, Daniel. Don't interrupt. Marcus's brain raced. Every instinct screamed at him to agree. To sign whatever, say whatever, sacrifice himself if he had to. The thought of Daniel's brains hitting the concrete because Marcus said no made him want to throw up. But he remembered something Reaper had said at the cabin. You let people stand with you this time. You don't get to do this alone anymore. He also remembered Daniel's face in the hospital when he'd talked about Robert Hayes, about a man who died searching for the sun standing here now. If he signed everything away, Victor would own him. Own the company. Own the narrative. The violence might stop in the short term, but it would never really end. People like Victor didn't stop when they got what they wanted. They just wanted more. Marcus looked at Daniel. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then he turned to Victor. I'll sign. Daniel shook his head violently, eyes wide. Marcus, no. It's okay, Marcus said, voice steady. If this keeps them alive, I'll do it. Victor studied him carefully, searching for a lie. Then he nodded. Good, he said. You're learning. He motioned to the second thug, who pulled a small briefcase from behind a crate and flipped it open on a makeshift table. Papers, a pen, and a sleek tablet sat nestled inside. Come here, Victor instructed. Marcus's legs moved like they belonged to someone else. He approached the table, heart pounding. The documents loomed in front of him, dense black text, lines marked with sticky tabs where he was supposed to sign. His name printed neatly underneath. Marcus Hayes. You're right-handed, yes? Victor asked, almost conversational. Marcus hesitated. Yeah. Then use your right hand, Victor instructed. I don't want any clever technicalities later. I know you street kids pick up tricks. He did. Marcus had already considered signing with his left hand, making the signature legally questionable. But Victor had anticipated him. He picked up the pen. His fingers trembled. Somewhere deep inside his pocket, Daniel's voice from the hospital whispered through his memory. You do have choices, Marcus. You're not powerless anymore. Maybe he didn't have the legal tricks, but he had something else. Information. Before I sign, Marcus said, stalling, I want to know one thing. Victor sighed. You're not exactly in a position to negotiate. You want me to play the grateful nephew publicly, right? Marcus asked. To sell the story you're writing here. If you want that to be believable, I need to know what happened. To my father. To my mother. Victor's eyes cooled. Why do you care about a woman who sold you? He asked. The words hit like a slap. Marcus flinched. So it's true, he said, voice raw. She took you in the middle of a custody battle and disappeared into the wind, Victor said. She saw an opportunity later and took it. She wasn't the first desperate person to sell something valuable, and she won't be the last. Something about the way he said it, the distance, the familiarity, made Marcus's skin crawl. You knew, Marcus said slowly. You knew she sold me. Did you help her? Did you pay her? Victor paused just a fraction of a second too long. Adults make their choices, he said finally. You're still a child. This can be your chance to step out of their shadow and make better ones. It wasn't an answer. It was all the answer Marcus needed. If the idea of a grown man casually confessing to buying and selling children doesn't make your stomach turn, you might be watching the wrong kind of story. If it does, don't look away from this one. Like and subscribe so stories that call out monsters like Victor get louder than the people protecting them. Marcus lowered his eyes to the paper, brain racing. If he couldn't sabotage the signature, maybe he could stall long enough for what? Reaper didn't know where he was. The safe house was miles away. No one was coming. Unless someone had already been watching. Marcus thought about Reaper's patches. About all the bikers he didn't know by name. About the way they'd moved in that alley, organized, practiced, like a unit used to bad situations. He thought about Catherine Hayes, too, the woman he'd heard about from Daniel, who'd supposedly faked her death to investigate her husband's murder. He hadn't met her yet, but that didn't mean she wasn't out there. He took a breath and put pen to paper, scrawling his name on the first line. Marcus Hayes. Victor exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders in a visible wave. Good, he murmured. Keep going. Marcus signed the second line. The third. His heart hammered louder with each stroke, like a countdown only he could hear. On the fourth signature, a faint vibration tickled the air, too soft for most people to notice. Marcus did. It was beneath his feet, in the walls. A low, distant hum creeping up through the concrete like the memory of thunder. No, not thunder. Engines. Big ones. Victor's head snapped up. What was that? One of the thugs asked, shifting his grip on his gun. Victor held up a hand for silence. The hum grew. Outside, over the water and the empty lots, came the unmistakable roar of motorcycles, dozens of them. The sound rolled through the warehouse, rattling the metal beams, vibrating in Marcus's ribs. Victor's eyes narrowed. He rounded on Marcus. You said you came alone. Marcus's shock was real. I did. I swear, I didn't tell anyone. Victor grabbed his wrist, fingers digging into the bruises. Then they tracked you, he snarled. You led them right to me. He yanked Marcus toward him, pressing the gun barrel against the boy's ribs. Plans changed, Victor hissed. You're my shield now. Outside, engines revved louder, a war drum made of steel and gasoline. Marcus's heart pounded in time. He was no longer sure if he was walking into his death, or if his death had just come roaring in to find him. Gunmetal pressed into Marcus's ribs, cold and unshakable. Outside, the roar of engines swelled until it felt like the whole warehouse was breathing. One long inhale of gasoline and fury waiting to ignite. Victor tightened his grip, dragging Marcus backward toward the nearest shipping container, using him like a human shield. Move, Victor snapped at his men. Positions. Now. The two thugs scrambled, one dragging Daniel behind a crate, the other sprinting to the side entrance to peer out. The lawyer stumbled, hands bound, eyes wide behind swollen bruises. Victor yanked Marcus closer, his mouth near the boy's ear. You're going to fix this for me, he hissed. You're going to stand where I tell you, say what I tell you, and if any of your biker friends come through that door, you're the first one I put down. Understand? Marcus nodded, because the gun left no room for argument. But his mind was racing. He hadn't called anyone. He hadn't left a trail on purpose. And yet the engines kept coming. The side door rattled as someone shouldered it from outside. The thug guarding it cursed and braced his weight against it. A voice boomed through the metal. Victor. Reaper's roar was barely human. You got something of mine. And someone of his. Marcus's heart lurched. He hadn't been abandoned. The door shuttered again. The thug glanced back at Victor. Boss. Hold it. Victor barked. They come in here, I start shooting. Maybe start with me. Daniel muttered, voice shaking. He's a kid. Victor didn't even look at him. Your leverage. Don't overestimate your value. The overhead windows rattled as more bikes idled outside, engines growling. Shadows moved on the catwalks. Victor's men, repositioning, guns drawn, eyes on every entrance. The air itself felt like it might snap. You're seeing a 12-year-old being used as a human shield while grown men point guns at his head. Most people would look away and pretend they didn't. Like and subscribe so stories that expose this kind of darkness don't get buried under mindless content. Victor dragged Marcus toward the center of the warehouse floor, keeping the gun firm against his ribs. Open it, he told his man at the side door. Just enough for them to see. The thug hesitated, then cracked the door. Cold air sliced into the warehouse. Outside, the pier was choked with motorcycles. Chrome and steel lined up like an army. Men in leather cuts straddled them, patches blazing on their backs, helmets off, faces grim. Reaper stood at the front. No helmet, no smile. Just murder in his eyes and the Hells Angels' death head on his chest. Beside him, a woman Marcus had never seen before sat on a black bike of her own, dark hair braided back, eyes sharp and assessing. Her leather jacket was unpatched, but she carried herself like someone who owned every space she stepped into. Victor nudged Marcus forward so they could see him. You come any closer, he called out, voice echoing off the metal, and I redecorate this floor with the boys' insides. Reaper's gaze locked on Marcus. The rage in his face didn't soften, but something else flashed there too. Fear. Let him go. Victor, Reaper shouted. You walk out of here without putting a hand on that kid. Maybe, you stay breathing long enough to see a courtroom. Victor laughed. You think you scare me more than a federal sentence? Please. The woman beside Reaper lifted a small device to her mouth. Her voice crackled through a speaker hidden somewhere in the warehouse, clear and cold. Victor Castellano, she said. My name is Catherine Hayes. The name hit Marcus like a slap. Catherine. His father's widow. The one who'd faked her death. I've spent 6 months gathering evidence, she continued. The video feed in this warehouse is live. Every word you say, every gun you point at that boy, is being recorded and broadcast. Victor stiffened. His eyes flicked upward, scanning. Cameras, tiny, well hidden, winked from corners and beams Marcus hadn't noticed before. Catherine's voice didn't waver. You poisoned my husband. You ordered the abduction of a child. You bought and sold babies like merchandise. Today that ends. Victor's grip on Marcus tightened. You think some live stream changes anything? He snarled. Courts can be bought. Witnesses disappear. Maybe, Catherine said. But a city watching? A country watching? Harder to make all of them vanish. The thug by the door swallowed nervously. Boss, she's not bluffing. My phone's, look. He glanced down at the screen. It's everywhere. Victor's jaw clenched. Turn that off. It's not mine, the thug stammered. It's online. Like, actually everywhere. Victor's eyes blazed. For the first time, Marcus saw cracks in the man's control. You're cornered, Catherine said. Let the boy go. Surrender. Maybe. You live long enough to tell your side of the story in court. Victor's gun shifted slightly, pressing harder into Marcus's rib. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for the boy. You hear that? He murmured. They think they can save you. Save everyone. That's the problem with people like them. They think the world is fair if they shout loud enough. Marcus's breathing hitched. You can still stop this, he said quietly. All of it. Just stop. Victor's eyes went empty. This is the only way I stop, he said. He stepped back, pulling Marcus with him, angling toward one of the shipping containers. You want him? He shouted at Reaper and Catherine. Back off. 10 feet. Weapons down. Or I put a hole in your miracle boy. For a long, awful moment, nobody moved. Then Reaper did something Marcus didn't expect. He holstered his gun. Reaper, one of the bikers hissed. Reaper didn't break eye contact with Victor. Slowly, deliberately, he spread his hands, palms empty. He's not my miracle, he said. He's just a kid who did the right thing when nobody else would. You want to hurt somebody, hurt me. Leave him out of it. Catherine swung off her bike, also raising her hands. You've already lost, Victor, she said. The whole city's watching you threaten a child on live video. You kill him, you don't just go down. You drag every ally you ever had with you. Victor's lips peeled back. Then maybe I take some of you with me. He began dragging Marcus toward the container, toward cover, toward a place cameras couldn't see as clearly. Marcus's mind raced. He had no weapons, no strength. Nothing but a body Victor was willing to break and a voice the live stream was currently amplifying to God knew how many people. So he used it. You think killing me gets you what you want? Marcus shouted, forcing his voice to carry. Everyone's watching, Victor. They know your name. They know what you did. Even if you kill us all, they'll come for you. Shut up, Victor hissed in his ear. No, Marcus said. Not this time. The hand holding the gun tightened. Marcus could feel Victor's heartbeat against his back, steady, but faster now. They're going to know, Marcus said louder, voice cracking, that you bought kids, that you paid my mom for me, that you poisoned your own brother because he wouldn't let you own everything. Every word was a match tossed into gasoline. You shut your mouth. Victor roared, jamming the barrel so hard into Marcus's ribs, he felt something pop. Pain flared white-hot, but Marcus kept going. My dad looked for me for 13 years, he shouted. You stole that from him. You tried to steal it from me. But you can't steal this. You can't steal people seeing what you really are. Something shifted in the crowd outside. They weren't close enough to hear every word, but they could see. Reaper stepped forward, ignoring the shouted warnings from his own men. There was something almost calm in his face. You know what we are, Victor, he called. People who don't walk away from kids getting hurt, even if it kills us. Inside the warehouse, one of Victor's thugs hesitated. His gun wavered. For a split second, his gaze flicked to Marcus. Just a boy, shaking but standing, even with a weapon dug into his bones. He lowered his gun a fraction. Another man on the catwalk swore. What are you doing? This is messed up, man, the first thug muttered. He's a kid. The whole city's watching. You think they're gonna forget this? Shut up and hold your post, the other snapped. But the moment had cracked something. Victor noticed. "Traitors," he snarled. "I made you. I fed you. You owe me everything you are." He swung the gun off Marcus, just for the briefest heartbeat, aiming it toward the wavering thug. That was all it took. Reaper moved. He didn't wait for a signal or a plan. He surged forward, boots pounding the pier, a war cry tearing out of him. Behind him, the roar of engines spiked as the bikers launched themselves from their saddles, a tide of leather and steel hurtling toward the warehouse doors. The thug at the side entrance panicked and backed away from the handle. The door flew open. Everything exploded. Sound became a physical force, boots slamming, guns barking, men shouting. Reaper dove through the opening, tackled the nearest gunman, and drove him into the concrete. Another biker took the catwalk stairs 3 at a time, shoulder-checking a shooter into the railing so hard the metal groaned. Victor cursed and whipped the gun back toward Marcus. He pulled the trigger. Marcus flinched, but the impact wasn't where he expected. The bullet slammed into his shoulder instead of his chest, a glancing hit that spun him sideways. He crashed to the floor, pain flaring through his arm like fire. The world tilted. The gun clattered away, skittering under a nearby pallet. Victor stared at his own empty hand, shocked he'd missed. Behind him, Daniel surged up from the floor like someone had lit him on fire. He barreled into Victor from behind, shoulder first, driving the man forward. "Run, Marcus!" Daniel shouted. Victor stumbled, then recovered with terrifying speed. He spun, elbow connecting with Daniel's face with a crack that sent the lawyer sprawling. Marcus tried to push himself up, but his arm screamed. Blood soaked through his jacket, hot and sticky against the cold air. The warehouse was a blur of chaos. Reaper trading blows with a man twice Marcus's size. Catherine ducking behind a crate as bullets chewed splinters into the air, bikers dragging Daniel out of the line of fire. Victor saw Marcus trying to crawl away and moved toward him, murder in his eyes. Everything else fell away. You've watched Marcus get beaten in an alley, hunted in a safe house, and held at gunpoint by a man who sees him as nothing but a problem to be erased. If you're still here, it means the pain hasn't scared you off yet. Like and subscribe so more people choose to stay when stories stop being comfortable and start being honest. Victor reached Marcus in 3 strides. He grabbed the boy by the hair, yanking his head back. "This is what comes of defiance," he snarled. "You could have had a soft life. Instead you chose." A gunshot cut him off. Victor staggered. For a second, Marcus thought he'd imagined it. Then he saw the spreading red stain blooming across Victor's shoulder, directly above his heart, but just shy of fatal. Victor whipped around, shocked. Catherine stood near the crate she'd taken cover behind, gun in both hands, arms locked, eyes unflinching. Smoke curled from the barrel. "That's for Robert," she said. Victor lifted his own hand like he might find a weapon there waiting for him. It was empty. The gun was still somewhere under the pallet, out of reach. He looked at Marcus, at Catherine, at the bikers now closing in from all sides, at the cameras overhead, blinking silently. Something in him deflated. "It was never going to be you," he said to Marcus, bitterness bleeding through the arrogance for the first time. "Your father should have chosen me. I would have made him a king." Marcus met his eyes, shoulder burning, ribs aching. "He wanted a son," he said, "not another monster." Victor's face twisted. For a moment, Marcus genuinely thought he might try to lunge at him anyway. One last desperate move. Instead, Victor did something worse. He smiled. "We'll see what the jury thinks," he said, and dropped to his knees, hands lacing behind his head. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Catherine didn't lower her gun. "This isn't surrender," she said quietly. "This is you betting on the system you corrupted." Victor tilted his head. "We all bet on something." Reaper reached Marcus's side, dropping to his knees so fast he nearly slid. His hands hovered over the boy, torn between checking wounds and pulling him into a hug. "You okay?" His voice broke. Marcus let out a shaky laugh. "Define okay." Reaper's eyes flashed wet for a second, then hardened again. "You're bleeding on my floor, kid. That's enough of a definition for today." Other bikers moved through the warehouse, disarming Victor's men, zip-tying wrists, kicking weapons away. Catherine started barking instructions into her device, coordinating officers on their way to the scene, making sure no one lost the footage. The adrenaline began to ebb. That was when the real pain hit. Marcus sagged sideways. Reaper caught him carefully, easing him down. "Stay with me," Reaper murmured. "You hear me? Don't you dare tap out now." Marcus blinked up at him, fighting the heavy pull of exhaustion. "Thought you didn't want me doing things alone anymore." Reaper gave a ragged half-laugh. "Yeah, well, guess I'm stuck with you now." Catherine approached, lowering herself into a crouch on Marcus's other side. Up close, her features were sharp but kind, eyes red-rimmed like she looked at him and saw someone else overlaid on his face. "Marcus," she said softly. He squinted at her through the haze. "You're Catherine?" "Yes." Her throat bobbed. "I loved your father. He would have moved heaven and earth to be here. I tried to do the part he can't." "You did," he murmured. "You got him." Everybody saw. Her gaze flicked briefly to Reaper. "He's stubborn," she said. "Like your dad. Like you." Marcus tried to smile. "Must run in the family." A paramedic pushed through the cluster of bikers, dropping to his knees beside Marcus. "We need to get him to a hospital," he said briskly. "Now." Reaper hesitated just long enough to squeeze Marcus's uninjured shoulder. "You ride with him," he told Catherine. "I'll follow." Marcus's eyes fluttered. "Reaper." "Yeah, kid. If I don't," he swallowed, forcing the words out. "Make sure Lily knows I'm sorry for bringing this to her." 4. Reaper's grip tightened. "Don't you put that on yourself," he growled. "You didn't bring this. Victor did. All you did was stand up when grown men looked away. Lily knows that. She'll always know that." Marcus's vision blurred. "Okay," he whispered. The paramedics lifted him onto a stretcher. The ceiling rolled past overhead, lights and beams and cameras smearing together. Victor's face flickered at the edge of his vision, hands cuffed now, shoulders squared, expression unreadable. For the first time, Marcus didn't feel afraid of him. He felt done. The warehouse doors opened. Daylight slammed into his eyes. He squeezed them shut as cold air washed over his skin. Voices shouted. Sirens screamed closer. Bikes rumbled. Somewhere, a news helicopter chopped through the sky. The last thing Marcus felt before the ambulance doors closed was a rough, calloused hand gripping his, refusing to let go. 3 months later, the hospital smell had finally faded from Marcus's clothes. Not that he wore hospital clothes anymore. He sat on the back steps of a brick building on Chicago's South Side, watching kids chase each other around a cracked concrete yard that had once been an abandoned lot. Fresh paint brightened the walls now. Murals of wings and wheels and faces that looked like his had, not so long ago. Tired, hungry, hopeful anyway. The sign out front read, Hayes Haven Youth Center. Underneath, in smaller letters, in memory of Robert Hayes. In honor of the kids nobody sees. Reaper stepped out, 2 paper cups in hand. He handed one to Marcus and sat beside him. Hot chocolate? Marcus asked, amused. Doctor's orders, Reaper grumbled. No caffeine for the concussion kid yet. Marcus snorted. That was months ago. And yet you still forget to eat if someone doesn't throw food at you. Reaper took a sip. So we're sticking to doctor's orders for a while. Catherine's voice floated out from inside, organizing volunteers, double-checking schedules. She'd split her time between prepping for Victor's trial and building this place with Marcus, using the money he technically still owned, but making sure it went to kids who lived a life he'd just barely escaped. Daniel had recovered too, though he now wore a faint scar along his jaw and a permanent understanding of how far people like Victor would go. He'd traded high-rise corner offices for a smaller practice focused on protecting kids and systems designed to forget them. As for Victor, his face was never far from the news now. Mugshots splashed across screens, trial dates debated, charges listed like a shopping receipt of human damage. His lawyers argued. Prosecutors countered. Juries were selected and sequestered. But no matter what happened in court, the city had seen him with a gun to a child's ribs. Some stains didn't wash out. Lily's art thing is still at 4. Marcus asked. For sharp, Reaper nodded. She made me promise not to be late. Again, Marcus smirked. She's bossy. She's 7, Reaper said. They come that way. A group of younger kids paused nearby, whispering, glancing at Marcus like they weren't sure if they were allowed to approach. One finally mustered the courage. "Hey, Marcus," a skinny boy asked. "You really punched a kidnapper in the face?" Marcus glanced at Reaper, who tried, and failed, not to smile. "I really got my face punched, if that's what you mean," Marcus said. "A lot. Do not recommend." "But you saved a girl," another kid insisted. "And you were on TV. And the judge said you're, like, a hero." Marcus shook his head. "Judge said a lot of things." He pointed at the nearest mural. The one of a small boy standing between a shadow and a smaller child. "That's all I did. You'd have done the same." The kids exchanged looks like they weren't sure about that. "You don't have to be ready to fight kidnappers or evil uncles to matter," Marcus added. "Sometimes it's just telling someone what you saw. Asking for help when stuff's wrong. Not pretending you didn't hear the scream." They nodded slowly, absorbing that. "Go grab snacks before Lily gets here," Marcus said. "If you eat all the good stuff first, she'll yell at me instead of you." They scattered, laughing. Marcus watched them go, the knot in his chest loosening a little more. If you've stayed with Marcus from a freezing alley to this back step, through fear, blood, and hard choices, then you already know there are more kids like him than anyone wants to admit. Like and subscribe so these stories keep getting told instead of getting buried. Reaper bumped his shoulder lightly. "You did good, kid." "We did good," Marcus corrected. Reaper considered that, then nodded. "Yeah, we did." A car pulled up out front. Lily tumbled out, backpack bouncing, hair full of new plastic clips. She spotted them and bolted over, throwing herself at Marcus first, nearly spilling his hot chocolate. "Careful, short stuff." He laughed, hugging her with his good arm. "You promised you'd come to my art show," she said, serious as a judge. "I'm literally sitting here waiting for it," Marcus said. "Pretty sure that counts." She squinted up at him. "You're not allowed to get kidnapped, shot, or rich again today." "Okay, pretty sure 2 of those are illegal," he said. "I'll do my best on the 3rd. She grinned, satisfied, then turned to Reaper. "You too, Daddy. No fights, no yelling, no motorcycles inside the building this time." "That was one time," Reaper muttered. "And technically it was half inside." "Rules," Lily said, poking his chest. "No exceptions." Reaper saluted her. "Yes, ma'am." They headed for the car together. Reaper, Lily, Marcus, an odd little unit stitched together by violence and choices and the stubborn refusal to let one man's greed write the end of their story. At the corner, Marcus glanced back. The mural on the wall behind the center caught the afternoon light just right. For a second, the painted boy's face looked almost alive. He wasn't alone. None of them were. Marcus adjusted his jacket, feeling the faint pull of scar tissue along his shoulder, and smiled. He'd walked into hell thinking the only way to save everyone was to die there. He was wrong. Sometimes, the bravest thing you could do was stay and build something that outlived the worst thing that ever happened to you.